Welcome!
This is Gertie.
I'm Gertie and this is Ella.
I'm Ella, and this is our channel. Again!
Today we're going to be talking about getting diagnosed.
Yes, it's a very exciting topic, and our experience in this area is limited. Yeah, just because we do have diagnoses.
Diagnoses.
We've been diagnosed.
We've been diagnosed, but we are relatively young, and our process was relatively painless compared to quite a few others.
I would say almost the majority of people
I
have
agree.
a hard time with it. So for that reason, we went to the PMDD Facebook page where we asked other people to share their experiences. So most of this video is going to be talking about that, which is very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And since we're talking about other people's stories, we have written some notes on Gertie's iPad here. So if you see us pull out this bad boy.
We have them written down here, but for the sake of the video, most of these are going to remain anonymous.
Yeah, so everyone was super giving with their experiences, and we got like 21 comments or 24 comments.
Yeah, it was super great.
Just like an outpouring of information. So that has been great, and we've kind of took them and picked out common themes and tried to paraphrase.
Yeah.
So yeah, everyone's anonymous in this video except one person who shared their first name.
We're not quoting word for word, but we're just over here discussing basically different people's experiences, how we're all similar and how we're all different.
Exactly. I'm just going to quickly talk about my experience getting diagnosed. I've mentioned this in previous videos, but basically I said enough is enough. Something's going on. Something's related to my period. I called I guess I don't technically have my own GP, I would say, like family doctor, but she was assigned to me at the university. And right away I told her my symptoms, and she said, okay, yeah, there's this thing called PMDD. Sounds like you have it. Let's get you tracking symptoms and see where that goes. I also, she gave me an SSRI right away, so I was put on escitalopram I didn't walk out the door because it was during COVID, from hanging up the phone.
Yeah.
Which was a shock because there really wasn't any process to get to medication. It was just like, here's medication, and to clarify that this is happening, you're going to journal about it and see if there's a pattern.
I think it's also important to note that your mom did bring it up to you and you did kind of know what you were getting into before going.
Yeah, my mom had said, hey, there are things out there. There's this thing called PMDD. I don't know much about it, but sounds like it could be you.
Mm-hmm.
But before I called, I hadn't done any research myself on it. I just had a general idea that there was stuff out there that it could be. Yeah, and I understand you had a similar experience.
Yeah, for me, I had my experience with my IUD. My mom told me that she thought I had it, and then a year later I started a job, and with stress and, schedules and stuff, my symptoms got worse, so I ultimately decided to go to a doctor, and he was just my family doctor, and I told him that I thought I had this and that my my symptoms were linked to my cycle, and he said, yeah, agreed, and then sent me off with a diagnosis and a prescription, really. Personally, for me, I found that experience to be a little bit strange because although I do believe that I have this and I went, it was like there's very little thought put into it.
Yeah, from what other people have been saying too, and from our own experiences, a lot of the time you go in, you're looking for an answer. Sometimes they know, sometimes they don't, but it's a very simple process of them just being like, well,
Yep.
Sounds like you got this, or I believe you.
Yeah.
And there's no tests they can do for it. There's no, you don't get, a certificate.
No.
There's nothing that says, hey.
It's really hard to struggle with, I guess, a sense of imposter syndrome, really. Because
Definitely.
You're just like, oh, okay, am I good now? Oh.
Once I originally found out, I just broke into tears reading articles online about people's experiences because I was like, this is me. This is 100% me. But then after a few months in on my SSRI, I was like, wait, do I really have this? I was experiencing imposter syndrome just because it had been such a painless diagnosis for me.
That's currently what I'm going through because as soon as I got diagnosed, I got put on the pill and immediately started skipping my periods. Yeah. So I no longer had a natural cycle, and also with this diagnosis couldn't put the symptoms to a cycle, and it was just very like, oh, what if I don't really...
Again, it took my mom saying, no, there's a huge difference. And now my medication has plateaued enough for me to be like, yeah, I definitely have this, but it has taken the better part of a year, I think, to be like, yes, I feel validated in my diagnosis. But at the beginning, it was just kind of like, wow, seriously? Okay, that's it? You know, like there's not more to getting diagnosed.
It's very tricky, and a lot of people have expressed that. And speaking of that, we can get into it, I think.
Let's do it. Let's power up the iPad. Okay, so let's get into this. So,
one person ended up saying that a young doctor diagnosed them right away, and the patient didn't even know what PMDD was, and that the curriculum for doctors could possibly be
getting better.
Be getting better and moving towards a positive.
I think that makes sense, just, you know, with PMDD becoming official in North America in 2013. Obviously, the medical system's going to take a while to catch up.
This person's mom diagnosed them.
Right.
And then after they started tracking, they ended up getting a diagnosis from a psychiatrist and their GP.
Yeah, and that's a very common experience from what I've heard from other people. Like I said, family notices a lot of the time.
Yeah, that can tend to be a huge red flag if you're... A lot of the time, it's not you realizing, it's other people. This person, I feel like I really relate to. They said that they were lucky and they walked into a family doctor and told them what they thought they had and walked out with a prescription after getting asked a few questions. And I feel like that was definitely my experience.
Yeah, like the super seamless...
Yeah.
Walk in,
walk out, baby.
Self-identified, doctor's like, sounds about right.
I don't love it, but I mean... Hey.
You gotta diagnose.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah. This person didn't get a formal diagnosis originally, but was having suicidal thoughts, which is one of probably the most alarming. Yeah. Yes, obviously the most alarming symptom, and very closely tied to premenstrual disorders in general.
Yeah.
And their psychologist actually kind of invalidated the fact that they had PMDD by saying, oh, but your symptoms, your emotional symptoms, last a few days into your period. And that's actually really common. Super common.
It's something that I deal with personally, and I know, Ella, that doesn't tend to be the case with you, but it has happened.
It has happened to me before, and it was alarming just because it wasn't my norm, but I felt validated in the sense that it does happen to other people.
Yeah.
And it is very common. And again, everyone's experience is different. We really can't say, hey, you don't have this thing because you don't fit this box.
We can't express that enough. Everybody has different bodies and different hormones going into it. It's overall a reaction to hormones, so everybody's going to be different. It just works like that.
This is interesting. A couple people said that their family doctors didn't know at all what PMDD was, and they had to explain it to their doctors multiple times over and advocate for their own condition.
Yeah.
And a few people said that.
A few people said that.
And I've heard it from other people too, that it was like them being like, what is PMDD?
Well, this person also, like another person said that they were diagnosed by really their naturopath, and their psychiatrist didn't know what it was, and they ended up, their GP ended up referring them to a gynecologist, and they're still waiting on that referral. Yes, I am also waiting on a gynecology referral. Yes. It is an issue.
I think all across Canada, everybody is experiencing huge waits, but especially with gynos.
Yeah.
Like waiting like a whole year just for a first appointment, and 3 months for a referral. Like that's...
If there's anything to note from this is that women's health is should be more of a priority than it is in the healthcare system.
Severely under-prioritized.
Yeah, to put it politely, really.
Yeah. And I think it's hard, again, we have been living in a global pandemic and the healthcare system has been overloaded.
Right.
But there are certain areas that are slipping through the cracks, and one of those has been women's health. Not the only one, but definitely a big one.
I mean, we just happened to be diagnosed during a global pandemic, but there was also a lot of people that wrote in saying that it took them 10 years and 3 doctors, and then we got that response from a couple people that it took years and years. Disclaimer, we are not saying these diagnoses
aren't valid.
Yeah.
They are valid.
We are not saying these
Hard to say this in plural, bear with us. I don't want to invalidate, and Gertie doesn't either,
anyone's diagnosis. I'm in the boat of these people. I'm not trying to invalidate my own or any other diagnosis. Like, that's not
I'm
what this
all
is about.
for doctors believing patients.
That's true. And at the end of the day, you know your body more than anybody else. Do you want me to read this one to you? I diagnosed myself and my doctor confirmed it. She didn't know what it was and prescribed me an SSRI, which made me suicidal. I stopped after 1 week and was scared by the experience, that I didn't treat it for years. Then I started working with a naturopath who got me on a bunch of supplements and dietary tweaks that really helped, along with a mild antidepressant. I saw a gyno who diagnosed me again, and he wanted to put me on chemically induced menopause, but I opted to stay on the natural route, which is not perfect. But if I'm eating okay and exercising and keeping myself balanced, is manageable.
There's a lot of good points in that.
Yeah. I think that medication isn't the answer for everybody. If there's anything that we've heard from everybody is that it's always going to be a mix of treatments and
there's no fix-all
solution, and everybody has different things that are going to work for them. We were very fortunate to get to have a Zoom call with a woman named Sheila, and I feel like it was very informative and nice to hear her story, and we can kind of share a bit about her story. I feel like it relates to this other person's comment quite a bit.
So Sheila actually found out that she had PMDD after having her first and only pregnancy when she was 37. Obviously a later pregnancy. Yeah. She gave birth to her son when she was 38, right? And then after that, started to experience both physical and mental, emotional symptoms. And she always said that she felt like she always had PMS. Like, that was always something she experienced, but
it
not
was never anything that needed to be diagnosed or treated, she said. Her husband is actually a scientist and ended up noticing her kind of emotional dysregulation and ended up tracking it over the course of a year, which definitely like says something about family and loved ones
and the role they play in all of this, for sure.
She found that the lack of vitamin D, lack of sleep, and the added stress of having a kid really added to her physical symptoms and really affected her, and ultimately led her to seek treatment in the medical system. And
she got put on one SSRI to begin with, was on it for about 3 months, and it wasn't working for her.
Really didn't like it.
And that's a big thing, is trial with SSRIs is something really common that a lot of people experience.
What hopefully every doctor will tell their patient is it is a journey to get on the right one. We are going to be talking about...
We'll talk more about that.
We haven't really talked about our treatments that we've tried, because that is going to be like definitely an in-depth thing on this channel. Sheila eventually... found solace with, like, she found an SSRI that helped, and she really connected with natural remedies, and finding a naturopath was a bit of a challenge, but she eventually found a naturopath that really worked for her and found that it made the difference.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, is that it took a few naturopaths for her. Like, I think she said 3 before she found, like, the one that really... work.
It goes back to the whole, like, there is no fix-all. Everything is experimenting and trial, and that can be really, really challenging to manage when you're dealing with a chronic illness or a disability, you know? Like,
trial
error, and it can feel quite hopeless or quite time-consuming, and when you're trying to just keep your head above water, also managing to try 75 different treatments and figure out which one works for you is exhausting.
And some advice she gave on finding a naturopath is try to find one that specializes in menstruating people's health and has that as a point of study almost. Because there's naturopaths for all sorts of different conditions. She also she gave us some great resources that we're going to link below.
We're going to link them in the description. She gave us, like Ella said, she gave us some really great resources and some books and articles and things. So we'll link everything she left us down in the description if any of you are interested.
That's Shayla's story. We want to thank Shayla again for
and thank
giving
everyone
us all that information, and thank everyone.
who
We
left
had
their
a
comments,
few people who are still working on sending us some stuff, and we're going to highlight those things hopefully in future videos.
Yeah. I think that's all we really have to say about this topic.
Let's sign off, but I'm gonna grab Baby for a little goodbye.
Baby, okay.
Baby's extra stinky today.
Baby is extra stinky today.
Baby the rat is here to sign off.
Another day, another rat cameo. Oh, yeah, personal check-in real quick. How you doing, Gertie?
Oh, yeah. My week so far has been interesting to say the least. I started a new mood tracker and for the first time have gone off my birth control to have a period. So it's been interesting, but
yeah. My week, I had quite a few breakdowns brought on by stress and I finished university recently and I had some changes going on looking for a job and all sorts of things. So I had some breakdowns and I actually filmed one of them, which I'll probably include in a future video to share. We gotta show both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? We come here and we sit down all put together, but that was not the reality.
Not the reality. Thank you for watching and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.